it's a little skinny this way. If you look at the difference in the bend quality, quite a difference.
And they were cute.
Oh yeah, that's so handy. I love that thing. Howdy guys, the project for today is a little bit more than just a Dale's tool of the day, so I figured we'd shoot a little video about it. It's kind of a tool of the day, but it's kind of a multi-part sort of a thing. So we've got this Eastwood bender. So I built a go-kart a year ago. And I've got a pretty nice bender that I'll probably do a video on at some point. It's called a Hausfeld bender out at the farm shop. But I wanted to build a go-kart and I wanted to bend some tubing. So I hopped on Amazon and was looking at stuff. And, you know, there were some Chinese brand ones and some different options. And I ended up buying this Eastwood brand because, you know, I heard that they were a pretty good brand. I guess they do a lot of car fabrication stuff and like roll cage bending, and they have welders that like auto body guys and car guys like to use. Never really welded with any of their welders, but I hear that they're okay. So I thought, well, I'll get an Eastwood brand. It's a little better. And you know, I hopped on Amazon at probably about 3 o'clock in the morning, didn't read all the fine details, and it said it was good for 3/4 inch tubing, clear on up to like 1 3/4 inch. I'm like, oh sweet, that'll do what I need. Well, I didn't read the fine print, and it has a 3/4 inch die, a little 3/4 inch die. It's got a 1 inch die. It's got a 1.5 inch die and an 1 3/4 inch die. Maybe it's got one more. Oh, 1 5/8 inch die, which is probably great. That's probably the size that a lot of roll cages and stuff are good for. Well, anyhow, after I ordered this guy, I went and ordered a bunch of tubing to build a go-kart out of, and a bunch of what I got was 1 1/4 inch tubing. Well, if you listen to all those sizes I just said, Eastwood didn't have an 1 1/4 inch die for this. And I hopped on their website, and I'm like, well, I'll just order, you know, I'll order another die, and I'll just buy a die, and it'll be fine. Well, they don't even offer a die that I could find for this machine. They have one for their higher quality bender that's a little more expensive, but this, I had already ordered this, so I made it do. I ended up actually bending some of this 1 1/4 inch with the 1.5 inch die, which you can do, but it kind of makes it oval shaped, and it isn't probably near as strong, but it will get it done in a pinch. Anyhow, so I hopped on Amazon to figure out what other 1 1/4 inch dies they had, and I saw this one. It's for a brand of bender called a Speedway. Well, they sell the whole bender and a whole bunch of dies, and this one's for 1 1/4 inch, and it fits this tube pretty good, this 1 1/4 inch tube. Well, it looked very similar to the setup for the dies for the Eastwood, and I thought, I wonder if I can make that work. You know, I'm not opposed to modifying a tool rather than buying a whole other one. So if you look at this, it looks pretty similar. It's about the same diameter of bending radius, roughly, but there's a few differences. This hole here, well, the center hole for one is the right diameter, but it's the wrong overall width, so I'll have to cut this one down to fit. The hole that the hydraulic press or that the hydraulic pin goes to is smaller, so I'll have to drill that out, and I need to keep enough meat there, so I might have to drill it to that side of the hole. That's going to be fun. And then, you know, it's got these little roller guides for the tube to roll along, and the Eastwoods have a bigger diameter, which is, you know, hopefully this is going to work with the hole placement. The problem is the pin that fits these Eastwoods is bigger. It doesn't quite fit the, you know, square peg round hole. Different brands trying to do the same thing but differently. So I found in my stuff here in the hobby shop a little chunk of this 1-inch sucker rod, which ought to work. And what sucker rod is you know, have you ever seen the pump jacks that pump the oil out of the ground? Well, they go up and down, and what they do is they pull a whole bunch of this stuff, like 10,000 foot or so of this stuff up and down inside the hole. And then at the bottom, there's a pump that as that goes up and down, it lifts the fluid and the oil up out of the hole. And anyhow, that's called sucker rod, and it wears out. So you usually have a whole bunch of this stuff floating around the oil field for pretty cheap. And I just happen to have a chunk of it, and hopefully that'll work. It's pretty tough stuff. So it's a little bit harder. It's more of a high carbon steel. And the problem is, and I've seen this over and over again with farmers and everybody who tries to use it, even me, if you weld to this, it is almost guaranteed to break at some point, especially if there's vibration involved right next to your weld. It'll heat affect and ruin the temper of the metal right next to it, and it just gets really brittle and it'll snap. But I think it'll work for a pin for this application. So let me see, is that all we got to do? Yeah, I think that's about it. We're going to put the electric powered hydraulic cylinder on there. We're going to put the different pins and drill holes and cut down this and see if we can make an 1.25 inch die that's not meant to go with this bender, go with this bender. All right, guys. Well, here we go, guys. I kind of got it clamped in here. It's a little bit of a janky setup to clamp onto this odd thing. I think I have it square.
Hey, Rod.
Oh.
It's at least down flat on the vise here. We'll see if we can drill it where we need to, or I'm a little worried about the rigidity of this here Harbor Freight drill press, the bane of my existence, but we'll give it a try. That actually went better than I thought it might. Alrighty guys, next thing we got to do is we got to make this part narrower by about 1/8 inch on each side. I got myself a mark here and we'll go down to that. One side down, one to go. Oh yeah. Now we just got to attach a cylinder to that, make it all happy. Cool beans. Don't you just love trying to sand off the powder coat? It seems like it just smears from one spot to another. Well, we got it. Should be able to weld it now. Hey guys, so here's where we're at. I got the hydraulic cylinder that's tied to the pump all hooked up and working pretty good. it goes back and forth quite well. I had to add a little bit of extra spring because the cylinder is a little heavier to give it a better return. Just some old trampoline springs that I got that, me being a hoarder, I got a bucket full of them from some trampoline I took apart at some point. Anyhow, they come in handy, so is it hoarding if they're useful? Now the return, if I press on the little foot pedal, is a little slow, but it works. It sure beats hand pumping. And it was a little slow back when it was the jack too, so maybe I need to put more spring pressure on there. Problem is the more spring pressure you put in there, the more difficult it gets to change the dies and whatnot when it comes time to pull all the pins. Then you got a bunch of springs to deal with. I'd like to have something where it could like unpin and the spring tension go away. I don't know. I'll figure something out. But for now, it ought to work. But the real problem we got here, guys, is I put this little roller die that it's got here. You can see down the thing, and it's touching here, which I think is a little too tight anyway. I had to make some little spacer thingies to keep this centered, keep this wheel centered in here. But the problem that I have is that this die isn't made for that. Imagine that. You take a die that isn't made for a tool and try and modify it to fit with the tool that it wasn't made to go for, you're going to run into some problems. And the problem that we're running into here is you can see on this die that the center line of the radius comes like over to the center line of the hole, right? But it's kind of offset so that it's in line, whereas the center hole of this die, you can see that it's in the center of this, and then the edge of the line is down here. Well, that doesn't really make having the roller here, like you can see that the end is there and the roller doesn't start till way back here. It makes this I think the roller needs to be more like here, and this is the point where a normal sane person would be like, well, this was a horrible idea. What was I thinking? This is never going to work. This die is not made to go with this tool. I should have just bought the right tool in the first place. But I got something probably wrong with me, because now I'm like, oh, this is a challenge. Challenge accepted. I'm going to make this happen. So I noticed that it had these holes in the side of the plate here. And I think that's like access to get to like this pin and stuff, which is good. Yeah, I'm gonna use it to make a bushing, and then I just turned down some heavy wall 2-inch pipe that's like 2-inch double extra heavy, which the inside's kind of hexagonal, so that's kind of awkward. So what my plan is to weld those 2 bushings through there, and then weld this 1-inch pipe straight through, and then cut it off where I need to. Still looks a little close here, so I might need to make a little bit of an eccentric. I might have to cut this pipe just a little bit smaller and keep the pin to the bottom of the bushing and weld some gaps. I don't know. I'm making it up as I go. Hopefully it works out. We'll see. I'm gonna mess around with this a little bit. If I get it working, I guess you'll see it. If not, you probably won't see this part of the video, or maybe this video at all. So we'll go from there. I mean, what do? Sometimes you just should stop probably, but then you never accomplish anything. So here we go. Alrighty guys, here we go. We got that pin in and welded in, and it really wasn't too bad. I got her all welded in on each side, hit it with some welds from the back side and the middle. Yeah. Well, I guess the next thing to do is to give it a test. See if it's actually going to work, if all this messing around was worth anything. Alrighty, we'll see if this thing's even going to work. Wow, I think it's actually worked. Hey guys, I got the die set back up to the original configuration with the original dies, not the new die that I modified, and we'll see if it actually will bend a thing. Granted, I've got the 1.5 inch dies and the 1.25 inch pipe or tubing, so I'm gonna bend that real quick and show you how bad that was when I tried to do it that way. Doesn't matter whether it's the old die or the new die, it's always kind of a pain to get the piece out once you bend it. You gotta pull the bottom die, really helps. Well, there you go. That's what it looks like. It don't look, it looks a little squishy. It's a little skinny this way. If you look at the difference in the bend quality, quite a difference. Granted, this one's a little larger radius, and this one it just looks like garbage, honestly. That's the reason why I messed around with this whole die. The new die doesn't quite bend it to a 90. Granted, maybe I stopped a hair early on the bend. I maybe could have gone a little bit more, but you can see that it's not perfectly 90. But it's way better than the old, than trying to bend it with the 1.5 inch die. That just really didn't work. And you know, I was able to put the pins back in here. I was able to put this pin through. It all worked out. Having my extra bushing didn't really, you know, I didn't fix it till it was broken. It's still perfectly usable, and I think that this is going to be a nice addition. The only thing I wish is it would go up a little quicker. You can see that the little spring tension puller back majigger, a little lackluster. It's not the strongest, but I mean, it does work, and it really beats pumping away on a jack. But yeah, so there we go. So there's my Eastwood bender, guys. You know, is it an okay entry-level bender? Sure, if you're not wanting to bend 1.25 inch pipe. If you want to bend any other size, it works pretty good. They make a higher quality one. I kind of, you know, a little bit of buyer's remorse not getting the little more expensive, little fancier version that bends it sideways. But like I said, I have the Hausfeld bender. My problem with that, guys, I bought some dies for that to bend some 1.25 inch pipe for handrails and different things that I've done over the years. I built some benches for our city's park that turned out pretty good. But the dies for it are like $1,500 a piece, and that's for one pipe size at one radius. But granted, you can bend like a full 180 out of that. This here, you know, like we weren't able to bend a full 90, but you can't bend a full 90 on these dies for this little bender. That's the thing I didn't know. So when I read so here in the manual for this little bender, it said that it'll bend steel tube that's 3/4, 1 inch, 1.5 inch, 1 5/8, 1 3/4 from 0.049 to 0.090, and then right below it says it'll bend 90 degrees for 3/4, 1 inch, and 1.5 inch wall tubing up to 0.049 and 090. It's the same thickness, and it says one will bend up to 60 degrees, and it says the other one will bend up to 90. And then same thing down lower. It like gives the same wall thicknesses, same diameters, but it says, oh, bends up to 60 degrees, and then it says, oh, bends up to 90 degrees. Note, if a bend of 90 degrees is required or longer, you can just cut them apart and weld them together. It's like, oh, thanks for the advice. You know, I thought I was buying a bender that could bend a thing to the full degrees that I needed to. But, you know, that's what happens sometimes when you buy a cheaper tool trying to do the tool of a better tool. What do you do? You know, so I do this kind of stuff all the time. I don't maybe spend the most money on a tool because I'm like, oh, well, I just got to bend out some tube for a go-kart. How many go-karts am I going to make, you know? And then I get it and I'm like, oh, I really wish I would have spent that little bit extra to get maybe the next model up that would do more of what I needed it to do. But it's hard to justify sometimes spending the right money at the time, you know? You're just like, oh, well, you know, I can make it work. And then, you know, when it doesn't work, you're like, well, I could spend the money now, but I've already spent the money on this. If I spend just a little bit more on a different die and make it work, well, then I'm not having to buy a whole new tool. And, you know, but I enjoy this kind of stuff. Honestly, every time I go someplace to buy a tool and they're like, hey, do you want the extended warranty on that? And I'm like, no, I do not, because, you know, I'm probably going to destroy that tool. Well, not destroy it, but like modify it in some way that'll make it unreturnable before you know it, because I am one of the worst about using a tool and modifying it to get the job done. You know, you just do what you got to do to get the job done. But this has been a pretty cool little project, and I think that this electric bender is going to be nice. You know, sitting there pumping away on it, yeah, it's real controllable, but it goes slow enough that this is going to be no problem. I'm super happy with that. I think had I been this is a 20-ton ram. I think had it been a 10-ton ram, it would have gone too quick and been a little harder to control. Plus, I think I need the power of this 20-ton ram to probably bend some of the thicker diameter stuff. But anyway, so now I got to use this to build a go-kart. A lot of the stuff I've been doing, building this here cool table. If you want to check that out, I got another video with that where that slides up underneath the workbench. And you know, I used my rotary tool table that has all the cool tools on top of it to build this thing, to modify this thing. And all this has been building up to building a cool go-kart. So look for that in my coming up videos. I'm super excited. It's going to be a four-wheel drive go-kart. I don't want to spoil it too much, but hopefully I do an awesome job on it. But this bender is going to be key. So, all right, well, you know who I blame for doing projects like this where I dive into something that I probably should have just left alone, but I will like beat my head against the wall to figure something out, is 1980s television. I grew up as a kid in the 1980s and early 90s, and TV was way different than it is today. And, you know, we had shows like MacGyver that said that with, you know, some duct tape and bubble gum and wrapper and like some aluminum foil, you can make anything. And then like the show The A-Team, you know, a bunch of mercenaries come together and they got 15 minutes before the bad guys get there, but with somebody's random, you know, workshop for the lumber mill or whatever, they can make a forklift that shoots 2x4s and is completely armored. If you got 4 buddies in 15 minutes, you can build anything. I watched that with my daughter the other day because I wanted her to see it because I enjoyed it so much as a kid. Now looking back, I'm like, man, I would spend 15 minutes looking for a tape measure if I went to somebody else's shop like that and was trying to get anything done. But, you know, so it makes me optimistic, makes me think, hey, you know, with a little time and ingenuity, I can accomplish anything. And, you know, honestly, it served me pretty well. I've made a whole career out of it. So anyway, here we go. I love you guys. That's been this project. And remember, me and Jesus love you. Talk to you later.